Hi students, greetings everybody. Welcome to the Rat Trap story part 4. Now we will move on to the iron mill. Now let's see what happens at the iron mill. How this forge episode helps in the development of the story and what are its implications. So let's watch part 4. Ramjo iron mills, which are now closed down, were not so long a large plant with smelter, a rolling mill and forge. In the summertime, long lines of heavy loaded barges and scows slid down the canal which led to the large inland lake, and in the winter time the roads near the mill were black from the coal dust which shifted down from the big charcoal crates. The Ramjo Ironwork was a large plant which had shut down few years ago. It had smelter, rolling mill and a forge. Here you find terms which are peculiar to the iron mill, like the smelter, rolling mill, forge. A smelter is a machine in which the metal is melted into shape, and rolling is a machine to roll the metal into sheets, and forge is a place where the metal is heated. It had smelter, rolling mill and a forge. In summer, long flat bottomed boats, they are scows, they used to carry the material on the river. So in summer, long flat bottomed boats carrying the material could come down the canal which led to a large island lake for supplying material to the mill in winter. The roads turned black because of the coal dust that came along due to the transportation of the charcoal. In this paragraph, you can notice words and phrases that are peculiar to the terminology of the iron mill, in this and in the preceding paragraphs also. So these paragraphs throw light on the setting of the story. And where is the story set? In the Swedish iron mills. During one of the long dark evenings, just before Christmas, the master, Smith, and his helper sat in the dark forge near the furnace, waiting for the pig iron which had been put in the fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Every now and then one of them got up to stir the glowing mass with a long iron bar, returning in a few minutes dripping with perspiration, though, as was the custom, he wore nothing but a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. So one dark evening near the Christmas time, the master smith and his helper were sitting in the forge, which was built near the furnace. He was wearing a long shirt and a pair of wooden shoes. Both of them were waiting for the pig iron, which was to be put inside the furnace fire to be ready to put on the anvil. Anvil is a heavy block with a flat top which is used to shape metals. They took turns to stir the liquid, which was very hot. As they couldn't bear the heat, as they could bear the heat for a few minutes, each of them would return sweating profoundly. All the time, there were many sounds to be heard in the forge. The big bellows groaned and the burning coal cracked. The fire boy shoveled charcoal into the maw of the furnace with great deal of clatter. Outside roared the waterfall, and a sharp north wind whipped the rain against the brick-tiled roof. So here again we have the words which are peculiar to the iron mill. Now, that is bellows. Bellows are air bags that emit a stream of air used for blowing air into the fire. So one could hear different types of sounds in this forge. There was a big bellow which was blowing air into the fire with great sound. Also, there was a sound of cracking coal. One could also hear the bang of charcoal which was being shoveled by the fire boy. The sounds which were coming from the outside of the mill. There were sounds. These were of the waterfalls the highly speed north wind, which hit the raindrops against the brick tiled roofs. So, the fire boy here is a thematic metaphor. The fire boy shoveled charcoal, means he moved charcoal into the maw. Maw is the jaws, the mouth of the furnace, and with a great deal of clatter. Clatter is a banging sound. And outside also there were sounds. It was probably on account of this noise that the blacksmith did not notice that a man had opened the gate and entered the forge until he stood close to the furnace. Surely it was nothing unusual for poor vagabonds without any better shelter for the night to be attracted to the forge by the glow of light which escaped through the sooty panes. Sooty panes are window panes covered with soot. Soot is a black powder produced when you burn charcoal or wood, and to come in the warm themselves in the form of fire. The blacksmith glanced only casually and indifferently at the intruder. He looked the way people of his type usually did, with a long beard, dirty, ragged, and a bunch of rat traps dangling on his chest. So many homeless people used to get attracted to the lights of the forge, which peeped through the window panes, which were covered with the black powder of burnt coal. They would seek shelter here. They would warm themselves with the help of a burning fire. As the blacksmiths were accustomed to visitors, they were indifferent to the man. They just looked at him. The rat trap seller's appearance was similar to that of the other wanderers. He had a long beard, was dirty, wore long worn-out clothes, and had a bunch of rat traps hanging from his chest. He asked permission to stay, and the master blacksmith nodded a hearty consent without honoring him with a single word. The trap did not say anything either. He had not come there to talk, but only to warm himself and sleep. Tramp again is another word for vagabond or a wanderer. So since he is a tramp, the blacksmith did not speak to him, but just looked arrogantly at him. In those days, the Ramjo mill was owned by a very prominent iron master whose greatest ambition was to ship out good iron into the market. He watched both night and day to see that the work was done as well as possible. And at this very moment, he came into the forge on one of his nightly rounds for inspection. The owner of the Ramjo mill in those days was a very ambitious person whose aim was to sell only the finest iron into the market. Therefore, he used to keep a check on the workers both during the night and the day. The owner, on the night of inspection visit, when the peddler entered the forge, naturally, the first thing he saw was a tall ragamuffin. Ragamuffin is a person in rags who had eased his way so close to the furnace that steam rose from his wet rags. The ironmaster did not follow the example of the blacksmiths, who had hardly deigned to look at the stranger. Deign means to do something below your dignity. He walked close up to him, looked him over very carefully, then tore off his slouch hat to get a better view of his face. "But of course it is you, Nils Olof," he said. "How do you look?" The man with the rat trap had never before seen the ironmaster at Ramjo and did not even know what his name was. But it occurred to him that if the fine gentleman thought he was an old acquaintance, he might perhaps throw him a couple of kroner. Therefore, he did not want to undeceive him all at once. So, undeceive means to tell someone that his belief is wrong or a mistake. "Yes, God knows, things have gone downhill with me," he said. "You should not have resigned from the regiment," said the ironmaster. "That was a mistake. If only I had still been in the service at that time, it never would have happened. Well, now of course, you will come home with me." to go along to the manor house and be received by the owner like an old regiment comrade. That, however, did not please the tramp. "No, I couldn't think of it," he said, looking quite alarmed. He thought of the 30 kronas. To go up to the manor house would be like throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. He only wanted a chance to sleep here in the forge and then sneak away as inconspicuously as possible. The rat seller didn't find it to be a good idea to visit the ironmaster's place. He was frightened with the idea of visiting the large house of an old soldier, which according to him was not safe. After all, he had stolen the money with him. He didn't want to put himself in danger. His intentions were to sleep in the forge and then go away from there without even being noticed. So, here in this paragraph, we have a biblical allusion, that is, throwing himself voluntarily into the lion's den. From the imagery of a fairy tale, the story swiftly moves to a metaphor, drawing upon an allusion to another pretty far out and unlikely tale, that is, Daniel and his punishment for willing to do something. "Please don't think that I have such a fine home that you cannot show yourself there," he said. "Elizabeth is dead, and you may already have heard. My boys are abroad, and there is no one at home except my oldest daughter and myself. We are just saying that it is too bad we don't have any company for Christmas. Now come along with me and help us make Christmas food disappear at a little faster." But the stranger said no, and again no, and the ironmaster saw that he must give in. "It looks as though Captain von Stahler preferred to stay with you tonight, Sternstrom," he said to the master blacksmith, and turned on his heel. But he laughed to himself as he went away, and the blacksmith, who knew him, understood very well that he had not said his last word. It was not more than half an hour before they have heard the sound of the carriage wheels outside the forge, and a new guest came in. But this time it was not the ironmaster. He had sent his daughter, apparently hoping that she would have better powers of persuasion than himself. He entered, followed by a valet. A valet is a personal attendant, carrying on his arm a big fur coat. She was not at all pretty, but seemed modest and quite shy. In the forge, everything was just as it had been earlier in the evening. The master blacksmith and his apprentice is a learner, still sat on their bench. The iron and the charcoal still glowed in the furnace. The stranger had stretched himself out on the floor and lay with a piece of pig iron under his head and his hat pulled down over his eyes. As soon as the young girl caught sight of him, she went up and lifted his hat. The man was evidently used to sleeping with one eye open. He jumped abruptly and seemed to be quite frightened. "My name is Edla Wilmison," said the young girl. "My father came home and said that you wanted to sleep here in the forge tonight, and then I asked permission to come and bring you home to us. I'm so sorry, Captain, that you are having such a hard time." She looked at him compassionately with her heavy eyes, and then she noticed that the man was afraid. Either he has stolen something, or else he has escaped from the jail, she thought, and added quickly, "You may be sure, Captain, that you will be allowed to leave us just as freely as you came. Only please stay with us over Christmas Eve." She said this with such a friendly manner that the rat-trap peddler must have felt confidence in her. "It would never have occurred to me that you would bother about me yourself, miss," he said. "I will come at once." He accepted the fur coat which the valet handed him with deep bow, threw it over his rag, and followed the young lady out to the carriage without granting the astonished blacksmith so much as a glance. So Edla talked to the peddler in such a nice way which made him believe her, and he got ready to go to her. The peddler wore the fur coat offered by the valet and started following the lady. He did not even bother to notice the other people in the room. On the way to the house, the peddler felt that he had committed a crime. He would be punished for it. See his guilty feelings here. But while he was riding up the manor house, he had the evil foreboding. Evil foreboding means because he was guilty that he had stolen his money, his sixth sense was warning him that there is trouble ahead. Why the devil did I take that fellow's money? He thought. Now I am sitting in the trap and will never get out of it.